Joining us now, finally in the studio, my good friend, the Secretary of State of the great state of Mississippi, Michael Watson. Morning, Mr. Secretary.
Good morning, my friend. It's really good to be here. As you know, we've been traveling quite a bit of late, so I apologize for having to jump on the phone, but it's great to get out and visit all the wonderful Mississippians across this great state, and we're happy to be in the office today, and I look forward to our visit this morning.
Absolutely. So glad you could make it. So today is runoff, right?
It
primary
is
runoffs?
municipal elections. The primary runoffs for municipal elections, we've got about 42 that we have seen in SIMS that were registered through SIMS, where they can obviously print out their or get their poll books. And it's an important day, as you well know. Local government can impact your lives very quickly. And so people need to make sure that they're not tired from the big election last year and I'm just not going to go vote in this one. It matters.
Yeah. People
need to go vote, and then once you go vote, make sure you're holding your elected officials accountable as well.
Absolutely. And so the weather's decent, so we should have good turnout. No excuse not to get out and vote.
No excuse. And we saw some pretty horrific numbers on turnout with the first run here. And I hope folks will, again, understand the importance of these races, these elections at the local level. It's a huge impact on your life. And government that is closest to the people, obviously, is one of the best forms because you can hold them accountable. You see them every day. And I tell people all the time, I was last night was in New Albany, and there were some candidates that were there, and I said, listen, your job is much more difficult than ours at the statewide level because people see you every single day.
Good point, yeah.
So you have to be accountable and answerable to the people, and so it's a tough job. So everyone that's running today, thank you for putting your name on the line. I really appreciate the care that they're showing for Mississippi and for our cities across the state.
Yeah, it's a good point. At the local level, they are more visible, and if they're not, they probably shouldn't be in office.
That's exactly right.
So, you should remember that when you vote. If I hadn't seen them in a while, well, that's an issue too.
Yeah, and look, if you're only seeing them on a campaign year, that's a problem.
Yeah.
So make sure that you keep that in mind.
That's a good point too. So in Mississippi, like I think all states, if I'm not mistaken, the different forms of local government exists from city to city. I believe all counties are governed, however, by boards of supervisors. Is that correct? All 82 counties.
That's right. And so we had a lot of questions on April 6th, the original day of the primary. Not every municipality had an election that day because some are chartered differently and some do have different election cycles. So that's an important piece to point out, is just to make sure that you're aware. And this is something we talk about quite often.
Yeah.
It is a burden that should be felt and held by the citizens to make sure that you're engaged, to understand, does my city have an election today? And not only that, but making sure that your voter registration is up to date, that you're registered in the right place in the right city to make sure that you know you're in the correct ward or not to go vote today. So that's very important that we take that on as citizens to be engaged and responsible.
Yeah, so I know in some cities you've got mayor, alderman form of government.
That's
right?
Correct. Yes, sir.
Do we have anywhere there's like a city manager that would be hired by maybe the council or alderman?
We do in a number of cities. I know, as a matter of fact, Goche, off the top of my head, Pascagoula has a city manager, lots of those across the state. I don't know that we have a breakdown anywhere in our office of the different forms.
Okay.
Obviously, we can have that in statute and get that information to you. But
yeah.
Different forms across the state. Natchez is a little bit different. And that's the neat thing about, really, if we go back to the discussion that we've had before, the 50 laboratories of freedom.
Right.
That doesn't just apply to the country and the states. It also applies within the states themselves. The different cities that can try different things, and if it works in Natchez, maybe it'll work in Oxford. But it might not. So that's a beautiful thing about local government.
So you referenced the term charter. Now, so a city, do they determine do they control, I guess, their own form of government, or is that something that is granted or statutorily by the legislature?
So at the inception, the organizers would determine which route do we want to go.
Organizers of the city.
Correct.
Okay.
So, for instance, I know Goche is relatively, and sorry to mention Goche multiple times, but they're relatively new on the scene. And so when they came back, just probably I don't remember when they came on the scene, but it was one of the relatively new cities. And so they chose, look, which form do we want? And as we set this thing up, they make those decisions moving forward. And then obviously the citizens come on board.
I got you. Well, I remember just growing up in the city of Jackson, our form was a mayor and commissioners. And now we have a mayor and city council people who represent wards, areas. carved out within the city limits. So those things evolve. They change over time.
They do
as well,
and that's another important reason to be engaged and understand what's happening in your city, whether or not you're expanding your city boundaries and taking in new areas of the unincorporated parts of the county, or changing forms of your government. Again, being engaged and understanding what's happening is so important.
So here's a question on the text line: why are mayoral races determined based on plurality rather than majority? Is that true?
That's a good question that I can't answer off the top of my head. I have to look at the statute on that one.
So,
which is an important piece, by the way. When people look at the Secretary of State's office, they think, well, they run all the elections. We actually don't. We are a repository of information. We have the statewide election management system, which you're well aware of, our voter data.
Yep.
But the elections themselves are actually handled at the local level. So the executive committees at the municipal level as well as at the county level, unless they contract with your commissioners to run those elections, they are the ones who actually oversee these municipal races.
Okay. And another question, this is Scott in Clinton, says sometimes your city election polling location may be different from the statewide federal.
That's a great point. So we have a polling locator on our website, and this year there were some questions about that because we started seeing this.
Right.
And so we actually asked our team to pull it down during this municipal election because of those very reasons. There are different lines, and so we were pointing them back to the municipal clerks. Make sure you're calling your clerk to understand, hey, which precinct am I in and where do I go vote? So It's an important, again, being engaged, an engaged citizen. I can't say it enough. Making sure you understand which ward are you in, where should you go vote, where's your precinct, and do you have a runoff today? So asking those questions, a very important piece.
Where's the best place for a voter to go to determine where they're supposed to vote?
Yeah, so in a municipal election, I would call your municipal clerk down at the city hall and ask them, hey, which ward am I in? Where's my precinct? So making sure you're engaged at that local level will pay dividends for the long time.
What's going on in Canton? Can you speak about that? I just wanted to...
So Canton's an interesting situation. Obviously, we are hands off right now on that one. There are some issues that are going to be taken care of in the court system, and we're gonna refrain from comment on that at this time.
Okay,
so,
fair enough. Yeah. I saw the letter from your office, and interesting, to say the least.
It was, and look, I'm elected to follow the law. And so that's what we're going to do. And when the statute says something specifically that we can spell out if it was followed or not, then we're going to tell you what the law says. Okay. But when the challenges come, that's the AG's office and or the district attorney's office if there is fraud. And then if there's a challenge with the election system, obviously that goes through the courts.
Sure. The bottom line is it's for the courts and the legal system to judicial system to sort out here.
That's exactly right.
Yeah. Your job is just to make sure, like you said, they're following the law.
Here's the law, and again, if something is sent to us that doesn't meet the statute, then we will not accept it.
Gotcha.
But if something is sent that we believe does meet the statute.
Fair enough. Initiative 65. We got to talk about that. So
absolutely.
What did you think about the proceedings, and do you have any idea when the Supreme Court may tell us how they feel about that matter?
We had our staff meeting this morning, and I was asking my general counsel, Lee, she does a phenomenal job, and I said, Lee, you got any insider information that you can tell us? And she said, no, sir. So Lee Janis does a wonderful job for us. But being in those chambers, it's just something special about it.
Sure.
And those proceedings, and just the reverence of the Supreme Court, the questions that were asked. I thought both attorneys did a phenomenal job, and that's one of the neat things to watch. Just the counsel and the preparation, the time that they spend putting into that argument. And look, you've got these justices that are firing questions at you that you may or may not have thought through before they ask, and you've got to have an answer. There's no timeouts. So it was fun watching those attorneys, and they did a wonderful job, and they were very prepared. I felt like some of the questions were leaning certain ways, in which we all do as attorneys and as folks watching the court system work. But we'll see what the result is, hopefully sooner than later. I'm
going to assume you don't want to handicap it at this point.
I'll leave that to the books.
Well, I tell you, it seems to me, just as an ordinary citizen, as we're going to go to a break here for a second, these guys have done a pretty good job, have the justices, of not tipping their hand, in my view, which is what they're supposed to do. I think they've acted accordingly.
Absolutely. It was interesting. Richard Cross, real quick, asked me a question one day online. He said, hey, did the politics get into this thing, the overwhelming vote for it? And I said, well, they shouldn't. They're justices, and they're going to weigh out the law, and that should be the determining factor.
That's what you hope. You can hang with us today?
I'm in.
All right, awesome. We got Secretary of State Michael Watson in the studio. Stay with us. We'll take a break.